And just like that, the NFL season has come, and the NFL season has gone. 31 losers, and the Kansas City Chiefs. Welcome in. The working title I had for this podcast was 31 losers. That's originally what I wanted to call it. Didn't know if that would really get the point across, so I did the Good Old Football podcast instead. 31 losers comes from Marvin Lewis, who whenever would be asked about his never-ending inability to win in the playoffs, would reference the fact that 31 teams finish every season in disappointment. Marvin, of course, was 0-7 in the playoffs, never minding that the team had not won a playoff game since the early 90s. It was a deflection by him, drove a lot of people crazy, but he never backed down from it. That's where we stand until next year. One champion hailing from Kansas City and 31 losers trying to take that title away from them. And it all starts now with the offseason and putting the pieces in place. Patrick Mahomes, at 24 years old, has cemented himself as the face of the NFL. Someone will have to come and take that from him at this point. He's no longer the next guy. He is the guy at this point, and he cemented that on Super Bowl Sunday. I went back and watched the extended highlights on Monday. What he was able to do in just his 36th NFL start, 36. He's down double digits in the fourth quarter, going up against undoubtedly the best defensive line in football. He throws that interception in the fourth quarter. It wasn't right where it should have been to Tyreek Hill, but either way, Tyreek Hill probably should have made more of an effort on it. He was getting into the red zone right there. For a 24-year-old guy to make that mistake on that stage and then bounce back. I can't recall a quarterback who was so clearly on his way to a legendary career. I mean, look, Tom Brady won a lot early, but he never dazzled you. He never had near the highlight reel that Patrick Mahomes does in his first 5 or 6 years, did Tom Brady. And obviously, we're only in year 3, really year 2 with Patrick Mahomes. He did not play his rookie year until week 17. Even Peyton Manning, John Elway, Dan Marino, they were great very early on in their careers, but with 2 of them, the Super Bowl took quite a while to grab, and Marino never got one. So get used to Patrick Mahomes. The next 15 years, he is going to be the guy it seems like everyone else is chasing. He's obviously not going to win them all, but it's hard to imagine a scenario where we don't see him in the mix to win a title mid-January for the majority of the next decade. You know, Deshaun's out there. Lamar Jackson's out there. We'll see what happens with those guys. Baker Mayfield and Joe Burrow. Uphill climb for those guys. Darnold, Sam Darnold, Josh Allen. Those guys, it looks like, have the tools, but as we've seen with Dan Marino being the prime example, it does not always lead to titles. Patrick Mahomes is the most sure thing in football right now. I think you could make an argument is the most sure thing in all of sports. If you have to bet on one guy who's still going to be relevant and one of the elite in his sports in the next 10 years, I don't think there's anyone you take ahead of Patrick Mahomes across all of sports. There's some guys who come to mind. Giannis in Milwaukee. You got Luka in Dallas in the NBA. Connor McDavid in the NHL. In baseball, there's probably some guys, although they come and go a lot more often and bounce around more than ever in baseball. Mike Trout's still going to be there. Guys like that. But if there's one guy you have to say will still be considered amongst the elite in his sport 10 years from now, I'm betting on Patrick Mahomes. I don't imagine many people would argue with me when it comes to that. Jimmy Garoppolo was feeling the heat at the end of that game, too. He didn't play terrible. The 49ers did not play terrible. The Chiefs just came and took it from them. Garoppolo, fourth quarter, you could see they would slow it down, Fox would on the cameras, and Jimmy Garoppolo was wincing before that hit would come. Mahomes hung in there. The 49ers had that fourth quarter interception, and it felt at that point like this is it. The 49ers have done it. They've shut down Mahomes. They all run to the end zone. Some guys come off the bench, pose for a photo there. It felt like it was over. 20-10, under 12 minutes to play in the game. But from that point forward, the Chiefs just kicked the 49ers right in the teeth for the next 12 minutes. There was that interception, and then that was it for the 49ers. Party was over. Lights went out. Here's an idea. If there's more than 2 minutes left on the clock, a 10-point lead against Patrick Mahomes, probably not going to cut it. It might cut it, but don't celebrate until there's triple zeros on the clock. Did you not watch his previous 2 games, fellas? Hope everyone won some money on the game. Was kind of paying attention to that as sports gambling becomes a little more mainstream, a little bit more, Everyone's doing it now. I won a little bit. I didn't bet much. I never do. By the way, if you remember, I predicted the score would be 30-20 Chiefs. The actual score, of course, 31-20. So I miss it by just 1 point. I'll probably never get that close again, though, so I have to gloat about it. By the way, 49ers, as I mentioned, they played excellent. And for the majority of the game, they undoubtedly outplayed the Chiefs. But that 3rd and 10 bomb to Tyreek Hill that the Chiefs had on the possession after that fourth quarter interception, you had that followed by the pass interference when Travis Kelce was in the end zone and the 49ers defender did not look back for the ball. Once the ball got rolling for the Chiefs, there was no stopping them. So that was that last game of the year. Hope it was one of the better Super Bowls in recent memory. We've had a lot of good ones recently. No doubt, we haven't had any real bombs since the 43-8 Seahawks beatdown of the Broncos. I mean, last year with the Rams and Patriots was low scoring, but it was still a fun game. I thought the commercials in the halftime show were also as good as I can remember. Really one of the best Super Bowls in general from the point of the theatrics that go along with the game itself. I didn't know if there was... I didn't know there was any air quote controversy about the halftime show until Monday afternoon when I opened the old Facebook on my laptop. I don't have it on my phone because I don't care about it really. I just have it for professional purposes. And I don't really care about everyone's opinion. If you post on Facebook multiple times your opinion of something that has no direct impact on your family, you probably should see a therapist. It's a disgusting place, Facebook. Now, you don't have to have an opinion on everything, especially something like a Super Bowl halftime show. You can just shrug your shoulders and move on. You can do that. You can change the channel. That's also an option. There are certain television shows people probably don't watch because they don't enjoy the content. You can do that with the halftime show. Apparently, some people thought the halftime show was a bit risque. Those people probably view complaining as a hobby. And again, if you don't like something on your own television, that's a great thing about a television, is a remote control comes along with it. You can pick it up, you can change the channel, and then, or, spend time with your family, have a connection, text an old friend, but you'd rather go to Facebook and tell everyone how offended you are. I did love the commercials were great too. I love the Mountain Dew Zero Sugar commercial. Maybe that's just me missing Mountain Dew, which I've not had a regular one in a very long time because it is pretty terrible for you. So the Zero Sugar is a great idea. Bryan Cranston was in that based on the horror movie The Shining. Just thought it was very well done. There were a lot of great commercials. Only a few bad ones, but that's to be expected. We don't have to complain about them. We can just say, hey, that's like commercials on every other TV show all the time. You have the Google commercial with Loretta. Woo! One of the biggest party nights of the year. Google's like, oh, hey, hope everyone's having fun. Enjoy your chips and dip. But just a reminder, one day you're going to get old and the people you love, they're going to die. That was nice of Google to throw in there. But we are talking about it today, right? That's definitely the most talked about. So Google wins on that front. A lot of good commercials, a lot of good... I complained last week, I said something to the effect of, Shakira, and I like Shakira, but she hasn't really put anything out for a while, but she came out there and she crushed it. So I will eat my crow on that one. Her and J-Lo, quite the duo. I'm a big fan. Bruno Mars has typically been the guy for me who I think does the best, and I still think I would put him up there, but Sunday Nights was about as good as I can remember. Remember that year? I remember this, I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 years ago when Coldplay played the halftime show. That was just like the consensus most boring halftime show of all time. Every Coldplay song sounds like you would hear it at a funeral or at a place where energy is not expected to be. We nearly rioted over Coldplay, so we had to find something new to complain about this year, and apparently it was the outfits. I'll tell you one thing I'm okay complaining about, and I have been for as long as I can remember, is the lack of energy from the fans at the game. I mean, the amount of big situations where you get a little shot of the crowd and you just see people sitting there not on their feet, it drives me insane. I wish the NFL would do a better job of finding a way to get season ticket holders of the teams in the game to have a shot at buying tickets where they don't need to shell out between $3,000 and $5,000. I know that will never happen, but it would be great if it did. It's got to be weird for the players, though. And I've heard other players talk about that. I don't know why I said other players. I'm not a player. But it has to be weird for them to go through the playoffs, and every game you've got this riot of insane fans going nuts in all these NFL cities, and then you get to the Super Bowl and it feels like a boardroom meeting. I wish the NFL would find a way to fix that. They don't seem interested, and I get it. You want to make the most money. It's a business. I talk about this all the time. The NFL is a reality TV show. Their main goal is to turn a profit, and they're great at that, so they're not going to take business advice from me. But it's very disheartening for me as a diehard football fan to watch 3rd and 7 in the third quarter in a one-score game, and you've got old, Johnny Business sitting there in row 2 looking at his BlackBerry. Just kind of wish we could find a way to make it a better atmosphere. It'll never happen, but I will continue to advocate for that to happen. And I'm sure that'll go very far. I'm sure Roger Goodell has a very vested interest in what I have to say. The other thing that drives me crazy with the Super Bowl every year is the people who call for Monday after the game to be off, saying it should be like a national holiday. I mean, here's a better idea would be an adult who can handle staying up until 11:30 at night and still go to work the next day. Tiger up! No one is making you drink during the Super Bowl or eat the 6th piece of pizza after the 3rd slice of cake. Those are my only 2 complaints. You've got the fans who aren't into it, which that's at least one I get. I know that's never going to change, but this whole idea of people wanting an extra day off after the Super Bowl. I mean, you just had how much time for Christmas and Thanksgiving off 6 weeks ago? Get with it. So anyways, what else happened? Oh, President Trump took a little, he congratulated the great state of Kansas on the win. In fairness, it is a confusing name. It's right there on the border. It would make sense if you ask someone, who's not great at geography, they would probably guess Kansas is where Kansas City is. It would be like God congratulating Kentucky if the Bengals won. Similar situation. Right there on the border. Big fan base in that state. Some of us are just not the best at geography. He's also 73 years old. I mean, at that age, it's socially acceptable to get a little confused from time to time. So, you also, when he tweeted that on Sunday night, remember when you could just make fun of people in politics without starting a war amongst everyone? The good old days? Can't you just make fun of someone for being dumb from time to time without that meaning you're pledging political allegiance one way or the other? Can't we just be mean to each other? Anyways, I'll move on from that. Good to see Andy Reid get the monkey off his back. By the way, the coach with the most wins in NFL history to never win a championship now goes back to Marty Schottenheimer, who owned it before Andy Reid. He spent 21 years as a head coach, most notably in Cleveland, Kansas City, and San Diego. He's a guy who had some great years in all 3 of those spots and just could never win the big one, and it looked like Andy Reid was going to be the new Marty Schottenheimer, but again, finally makes it happen. Andy Reid, 61 years old, and finally gets it done. Now, I'm a stat nerd on these kind of things. The only head coach that could conceivably catch Marty Schottenheimer in the next decade would be Jeff Fisher, the former Rams and Titans coach. He's 27 wins behind Schottenheimer. However, I highly doubt we'll see him be an NFL head coach again. He was on my flight last year. Forget where I was going, but he was front row. Me and old Jeff Fisher, he was living the life. I noticed him, made a little eye contact. I could tell he was pleased that I did not go, "Oh, hey, I know you." He was happy to just be a dude. And then that ended up being the same day that I believe Jason La Canfora reported he was going to be an XFL head coach. Old Jeff shut that one down quick. Right there, let's see, John Fox and Marvin Lewis, both about 70 wins behind Schottenheimer. So, I mean, even if those guys were to come back next year and average 10 wins a year for 7 straight years, which is highly unlikely, it would still be a while before anyone could catch him. So Marty Schottenheimer, great NFL head coach, but he is now back in the driver's seat for, he's the guy now with the most wins without a championship. It is no longer Andy Reid. It did feel a little bit surreal to see Andy Reid get that Gatorade shower because it's literally been an ongoing conversation with him for 15 years. Is he the best head coach to never win a title? Because remember, right out of the gate, I mean, within his first, 7 or 8 years, he took the Eagles to 4 straight NFC championships, 1 Super Bowl. Of course, he had T.O. on the team, Donovan McNabb there. By all accounts, a good dude. Everyone seems to like him. So good for Big Red. The Fox camera showed him switching from his normal hat to his Super Bowl hat, and that's when it occurred to me. Whenever he decides to retire, he could shave that mustache, never wear a hat again. None of us would ever recognize him. That is a man who constantly looks like he is in disguise, and he's that dude. You take the mustache and the hat away, especially if he gets contacts or LASIK without the glasses, you would not know who he was. But good for him. By all accounts, a likable guy. Good to see him get it done. Kyle Shanahan will be back there. You feel bad for Kyle Shanahan, who has now blown, and it's not his fault in either situation, but, so goes life. With the, you get too much credit when you win, and you get too much when you lose, too much blame when you lose. So goes life as an NFL head coach. Of course, he was the offensive coordinator for the Falcons when they blew that 28-3 lead to the Patriots. And then yesterday, if you're someone who watches football regularly, you know the Chiefs are always one play away. It's not like they were up by 25 like we saw with the Falcons and Patriots. I mean, this was, even if their defense continued to shut down Mahomes, you're one tipped pass, one bad snap away from a scoop and score. Just like that, it's a 3-point game. So the Chiefs did a good job of never letting the game get out of hand, and that's what allowed Patrick Mahomes to stay in it. He's that guy who at any given time can make it happen. And again, for him to be, you thought maybe they were getting in his head, because that first interception he threw was the worst throw I can ever remember seeing him make. That was just one of those, what are you thinking type throws. And at that point you wondered, all right, have they got to him? But he bounced back, he figured it out, and now he's a Super Bowl champion, Super Bowl MVP. One more thing I noticed when I was rewatching, by the way, the NFL does an awesome job with these games of doing like 10 to 15 minute highlights where you can just go back and watch, the big moments, and it kind of sparks your brain. But if you remember, Andy Reid decided to go for it in the fourth quarter. They were down 3-0. He says on 4th and 1, we're going to go for it. Damian Williams comes up about 6 inches short of the touchdown. They get the first down. The next play, Patrick Mahomes runs it in for a touchdown. If Damian Williams gets that extra 6 inches right there, gets into the end zone, he ends up with 3 touchdowns instead of 2 on the night. He's probably your Super Bowl MVP. He had about 130 total yards instead of Patrick Mahomes. And because of that, Patrick Mahomes' resume, which is short for now, but certainly off to an incredible start, he's now got that Super Bowl MVP that he can add, onto his resume that some guys never get. Ben Roethlisberger's a guy who, in his 2 Super Bowls, he didn't get an MVP in either one. And I think he's a Hall of Fame guy, but that's quite an accolade to have. Roethlisberger doesn't have it. And again, if Damian Williams gets another foot right there, he's in the end zone. I can't imagine he would have 3 touchdowns, 130 yards, and not win MVP. Instead, Patrick Mahomes punches it in the next play. He's the MVP. Big difference right there. And again, you expect Mahomes to be there. I said I think he's the most sure thing in sports right now, but crazier things have happened. You never know. Maybe they get there, another 2 times and things just don't go their way the way we saw them come back on Sunday night. So just interesting little tidbit there, I thought. 6 inches, man. That's why they call it a game of inches. It'll be fun to watch as the offseason unfolds. Of course, Adam Schefter dropping that news on Sunday. Tom Brady will be pursued by the Las Vegas Raiders. That would be weird, right? To see him just in a different uniform. But again, you have to think right now Tom Brady is just using all the leverage he can. He's kind of pulling a LeBron, right? This is what LeBron did with Cleveland. He finally said, you guys have got to get me some weapons or I'm taking off. And that's why he made the contract the way he did. Feels like Tom Brady's doing the same thing right now. And maybe his camp is leaking those reports out there to let New England know he's serious about getting the things he needs or that he thinks he needs. And I mean, at his age, he needs those things. I mean, he's carried, B and C guys for years. It's finally time they go out and get him someone who can, make his job a little easier. It was clear at the end of the year that his arm is not what it once was. That doesn't mean he's not still one of the best quarterbacks in football, but man, you got to get the guy some help at some point. So we'll see what happens there. That's certainly going to be the story this offseason. I am going to take the next 2 weeks off from the podcast. It will be back on February 25th. Going to slow things down here a little bit for a couple of weeks. February 26th, by the way, is when players can begin to be franchise tagged. So I kind of looked at the NFL offseason calendar and decided that would be a good time to pop back into it, and I'll make a decision from there on how often the show will be happening. That franchise tag, I mean, that period alone, and we're only 2 weeks away from that? It'd be 3 weeks. I would take 2 weeks off, but the next one will be out in 3 weeks. But I mean, Dak Prescott, A.J. Green, I don't know why I called him Dak, it's Dak. Dak Prescott, A.J. Green, among the big names who we think will get franchise tagged. We'll see if either side on that end can work out a deal. Bengals are probably going to have to pay A.J. Green. I don't know, though. I'm so on the fence about that. Because on one hand, when he's on the field, he's great. On the other hand, he's not been on the field very much. And I wish I could sit here and tell them to put in a very heavily incentivized contract where, hey, every game you're on the field, we're going to give you X amount of dollars. But A.J. Green's camp probably won't fall for that because there's going to be an NFL team out there who's willing to take the shot and see if he's healthy enough to play for one of those big $40, $50 million contracts. It's just a matter of, it'll probably be more than that. What Julio get? 4 years, 64? But I don't even know if that's close to right. Let's check it out here on the old internet. But, do you give 5 years, 71 in 2015, $64 million guaranteed? That's where I got that number from. So I don't know if you can give. That was last off season. I guess at the beginning of last season, September 2019. I just don't think you can give A.J. Green that much money. I really don't. If you can load it up with something where it says, hey, you play 16 games, we give you, 15, 16, 18 million a year, fine. But if you guarantee that much money to a guy that has a lot of trouble staying on the field, you really put yourself in a predicament. The good thing for them is all signs point to them drafting Joe Burrow, who, of course, they can, have on a rookie deal for the next 4 or 5 years and figure it out from there. So we'll see. That's the thing, man. Roger Goodell, as much as we criticize him, he has done a great job of making the NFL have the spotlight just about year-round. I mean, you don't get more than about 6 weeks where the NFL is not at the top of the fold of the sports section for those of us older folks who remember what top of the fold on the newspaper means. All right. So if anything wild happens between now and February 25th, I'll in all likelihood record a quick episode. Be sure you subscribe to the podcast. That way, if I record something, it'll just pop on your phone. I was always against subscribing to podcasts for the longest time, but then I did it, and it just gives you a notification. You don't like it, you clear it away. It helps me out. It helps promote the show. By the way, if you've been listening all year, please just take like 20 seconds. Give it a rating. 5 stars would be great. I'll even take 4 stars. If you want any more, I will also update on what's happening on Twitter at Matt Edwards. And check out Auto Magic, of course, who sings us out here every week on the Good Old Football Podcast. So subscribe. If anything happens, I will update. Appreciate everyone tuning in all season long. You've been listening to the Good Old Football Podcast. I'm Matt Edwards. We will see you in a few weeks.